Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for another short story discussion. Pardon me, I almost said poetry discussion. We're here for another short story discussion. There's poetry on the channel every Monday. Short story discussion, which will appear in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one being the short story discussion playlist, but also this is the penultimate video in the Dubliners series. Now, I might do a couple more videos in the Dubliners series, a ranking of the stories and a review of the sort of short stories, the book as a whole. But as of right now, I'm not sure I'm going to do those videos. So this is definitely the penultimate review, the penultimate single short story review in the collection, as The Dead is the only video remaining to be made. This video will have three separate sections: a So What Happened section, a literary criticism section, and a writer's corner section. So, what happened in Grace by James Joyce? A man is passed out and fallen face down in the restroom of a bar. No, this isn't a story from my college days. A pair of men who found him carry him out of the restroom, and all anyone knows is that he came with two other men, and nobody knows where they are. Those two men are now gone. An officer arrives, and they get him to wake up with some brandy. Again, this is not biographical. He tries to stand up, the passed out man, but Mr. Power emerges from the crowd and says that he knows Tom, and he will make sure that Tom gets on his way. We find out that Tom is on a bit of a downward spiral. You pass out face down in the men's room, there's not many other places you could be. In conversation, Tom ends up agreeing to go to a Jesuit church service with Mr. Power, Mr. McCoy, and a couple of his other friends or acquaintances. We are not 100% sure on their history together. We just know that Mr. Power has a long history with him, and Mr. Power is kind of the biggest jerk among them if you really read into in between the lines. Even though Tom Kernan is more than a little standoffish through the men's visit, at the service, the priest tells those in attendance to weigh their own sins because there is room in life for redemption. Tom Kernan then ends up saying he refuses to light a candle. That's where he draws the line. He has converted to Catholicism for his wife, though he is a Protestant from his earlier days. He refuses to light the candle because he does not believe in magic. Now, there is but one literary criticism point that I have here, and it is, so for me, this story is really poignant from a literary criticism level. This story is really poignant from the fact that, look, there's a lot of stuff you could talk about. You could talk about how the men sit around and try to use Latin even though they don't know it. You could talk about how no one in this story is particularly knowledgeable about religion, but religion is a very big part of their own lives. You could talk about the fact that the Mass that they go to is about Jesus interacting with people who have not dedicated their lives to religion, and how that is important because, as the priest has said, not all men have to dedicate their life to religion, because if they did, the world would not go round. The world still has to go round so that the word of God can be heard, etc. So it is not absolutely necessary that everyone in life become, for example, a priest, a monk, one of these things, one of these, the Pope, right? One of these sort of religious ways to earn a living. Not everybody has to do that. You could make arguments about all of these things because there is something thematically in there. But I think where we have to start is where the story starts. This story starts with a literal fall. Tom Kernan has fallen. We learn that Tom Kernan has fallen in life. Tom Kernan, even though his wife makes the statement, he hasn't, he hasn't put hands on me since the boys were grown, meaning that at one point he was a rough and violent guy. It seems Tom Kernan has fallen on a rough patch in life by stopping his efforts. And look, the world is about inertia. The world is about entropy. The minute you stop washing the windows will get dirty. And Tom seems to have stopped washing the windows. In the story, Tom's bathroom fall injures his tongue. In the story, so that was his real life literal, obviously it's in a story, but literally in the story, Tom Kernan fell and it hurt his tongue, right? In life, Tom Kernan's metaphorical fall, the fact that he has kind of let go of all those things around him and his entire world is starting to degrade, that fall has left him bitter and a bit combative. Because of these things, the way you can look at this thematically, the way you can look at this metaphorically, is that he has allowed the fall that he has gone through metaphorically in life to change the way he speaks. He is bitter, he is combative, and we don't really, in this story, ever see Tom recover from his fall. We don't see him get back on his feet. We see him making motions. We see him attending a service. But at that service, the thing that he refuses to do is light a candle because he does not believe in magic. Well, in a practical sense, believing in religion in general is believing in a magic. It's believing in things that you cannot see. It's believing in things that you cannot prove. So when he does this, what he is doing in a metaphorical sense is that Tom is refusing to get back up. Tom has fallen. He refuses to get back up and to help himself. He is refusing the magic of religion in general. So I wanted to point this out. Late in the short story, we have this quote. For the children of this world, this is from the priest himself. For the children of this world are wiser in their generation than the children of light. Wherefore make unto yourselves friends of the mammon of iniquity, so that when you die, they may receive you into everlasting dwellings. That first part again. For the children of this world are wiser in their generation than the children of light. Tom refuses that light. Is Tom, in his refusal of religion, therefore being referred to as wiser than the children of light? So, in the writer's corner of things, I have 3 notes. This short story starts in media res. This short story starts right in the middle of things. This short story starts very impactfully. This short story starts with a man who has fallen in a public restroom. If I can go back here. Two gentlemen who were in the lavatory at the time tried to lift him up. What? That's where the short story starts. Two gentlemen who were in the lavatory at the time tried to lift him up, but he was quite helpless. He lay curled up at the foot of the stairs down which he had fallen. They succeeded in turning him over. His hat had rolled a few yards away, and his clothes were smeared with filth and ooze of the floor on which he had lain, face downwards. His eyes were closed, and he breathed with a grunting noise. A thin stream of blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. That's how you start a short story, isn't it? That sounds like it could have been written, well, maybe not with the diction, but that situation very much as if it could have come from a Chuck Palahniuk short story. Here's the thing, though. These next two notes spring directly from that observation. There are several ways to start writing a story. You can have some things plotted and planned, or you can just take your pen and go to the page. This feels like one of those stories where you take your pen and you just go to the page. This feels as if James Joyce had this situation, had seen this situation, or imagined this situation, and just started going with the story. And it never really feels like it evens out between the first and second parts, I guess I should say, of this short story. It never feels like it evens out between a man who falls face down into sludge in public versus the second part of the story, which is very I don't want to say nice, but very cordial. Whether that cordiality is more than moment deep, we don't really know. We have some observations from Mr. Power that make us think he doesn't really want to be any of these places with any of these people. Talking about the children's accents and things, noticing how they are lower class. And because of these things, that number 3 observation there, for me, this was a uniquely challenging short story. We start getting punched in the face with that fall, but we end, the pacing towards the end is very strange because after that, it's basically just a whole lot of dialogue. And that is sort of part of the reason that makes me feel like James Joyce just had this situation in his head and wanted to start writing it, not knowing where it would go, not knowing what the themes would be, not knowing, etc. And about 200, 300 words into the story, realized, oh, I did start with a fall. I could make that the symbol, the metaphor, the key theme of the story, the fall, right? And it's not bad, but it was for me very difficult to follow because of the fact that we get that, and then if you start reading the final page of this short story, there's basically no way to imagine where it was that you started. Not necessarily a bad thing, but while and whereas it is impossible from that last page to guess where this short story started, we don't really smooth it over. Which sounds like I am arguing against starting a short story in media res, but I promise that is not the case. Starting a short story in this fashion is a very strong way to start a short story. Part of the transition for me, I think, was also the introduction of all these different characters basically out of nowhere. And they don't have, just like one of the other short stories in this collection, where we have a whole lot of characters really, really fast, and it's almost impossible to keep up with them. The Cars, what was it? After the Race. We have very little distinction between these characters, and that makes them difficult to follow. That's all I have for this short story discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do on the channel, hitting the like button really does help me out on the channel, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button, because literature is the only thing that I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. Right now, we are about to finish up a read-along for Dubliners. I believe I will be taking on The Great Gatsby shortly after this concludes, probably in January. I am doing a read-along for Ernest Hemingway's short stories, the Finca edition, as we speak. There is a read-along going right now for Sylvia Plath's poetry. There will always be Bukowski and Emily Dickinson on the channel, and right now we are also going through Holly by Stephen King, which is his newest novel, and I hope to have you back for the next one.